All right. Hello. Great, Suzusa. Nice to see you here. Give me just a moment. I was just making sure that was working. Need to get my guest back. And got some fantastic news. Let's see here. Sorry about this. This is super professional. I get it. We're nothing if not super duper awesome here. All right. Just waiting for my guest to show up. So while we are waiting for him, real quick, just to, okay, let me start over. First off, good morning. Welcome back to Gaming with ADHD. It is our Thursday night live stream talking about, whatever I find interesting for the week. Tonight, we're going to be joined by my friend John from All Miniatures Great and Small, and we're gonna talk about his channel, what he does. Got a couple of news items that we'll talk about, a little bit of crossover with him and I, and we will go from there. Also, one thing that I did want to point out. Let's see. Yes, I'm going to try something. Hey, look at that. I can. Oh, all right. So that's the first time I've ever done that before on stream. Congrats, Zusa. You made it. You're famous now. Anyways, so a couple of real quick housekeeping things while we are waiting for John. If you are a fan of alternative tech options, I know I'm here on YouTube. YouTube's going to be the primary driver that I use for my channel. But if you... I suppose I should send John the correct link. Anyways, if you like alternative technologies, I do also have a channel over on Rumble and Odyssey, and would absolutely love to have you guys follow me there if those are platforms that you prefer using. It's good for, at least now, it's going to be the same content that's here on YouTube. I just have it set up to mirror over there, but I figured I also needed to start mentioning it because it's there, and why not if people are using it. So there's that. I do have a couple of other things that I'm putting together, but I will announce those at a later time. All right. So let's see. I sent John the wrong link, so I'm waiting for him to get that set back up with the correct link. So again, nothing if not professional here. All right. So he is finally here in the background, and welcome to John from All Miniatures Great and Small. How you doing, John?
Good. Thanks for having me on, Brian.
You're very welcome. Thank you for joining me. This is it's a little different. I've been wanting to expand and get into this part of it, so thank you for being one of the early guests on the show. Let's see. So, all right. So I've already gone over a little bit of housekeeping on this side, but let's go ahead and get into it. So tell us a little bit about John. Who's John?
Well, that's an interesting question. I ask myself that often. Especially in this hobby. But no, I'm just a family guy. You know the drill. And, instead of, going out to the bars or fishing or some other hobby, I somehow chose miniature wargaming. Uh, I think since I was very young.
Okay.
My dad was is a writer, and now he's retired. And he, when I was very young, like 6 or 7, he wrote a book about famous last stands in history, like Gettysburg and Midway. And we had like American Civil War soldiers that he collected. And I remember playing with those. And now I'm in my 50s and I'm painting more American figures. I just started from like Star Wars figures helped, all those kind of things. But yeah,
Okay.
So it was probably about 7 years ago that I decided I wanted to try my hand at this whole YouTube thing, and it was because it's all because I had a detached retina. I had eye surgery, and I was face down for like a week recovering, and I was watching YouTube nonstop. And I watched, I think Mini Wargaming was the one that I found first and watched them a lot. And I was like, maybe I could do that too. And I brought it up to the guys, and we gave it a shot. And so far it's been pretty good. It's, you know as a struggling YouTuber like myself, that it's hard to get traction at first. But I always knew I liked battle reports, and battle reports are my favorite thing to do. And I'm very agnostic when it comes to gaming systems. So I like all kinds of gaming systems. I knew I wanted to create a channel, and I knew I wanted to do battle reports, but I didn't want to dedicate it to 40K only or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to be more general. Plus, as you well know, the 40K YouTube space is pretty packed.
Yeah, absolutely. I when I was starting my channel, like I specifically named it what I did because I have so many interests, whether it's board games or miniatures or role-playing games, whatever it is. I'll give it all a try. Whether it sticks, that's a whole separate issue. But I didn't want to just pigeonhole into one topic that if I got bored with it, then the channel dies because I've focused so heavily on that one. But I absolutely understand what you're saying about the certain communities just being absolutely packed. I don't cover Games Workshop for the same reason. Not that I won't, like, it's not like they're banned or I'm opposed to covering them, but it's just, if I put something out for Warhammer, either A, I'm going to get a ton of traction off of it because it's Warhammer and that's what the algorithm wants to see, or, and then do I get locked in? And okay, well, I'm only going to make Warhammer content because I have to get the likes, I have to get the clicks, I have to get the views. And then at that point, it's not fun because I'm not covering things that I want to see anymore. So, anyway, sorry for interrupting there.
No, that's absolutely the way I feel, and and I say that although I'm currently editing a 30K battle report right now, so I will do Games Workshop stuff. But it's kind of more on my timetable because like 40K does not get as much traction as other games that I cover. Mm-hmm. And I would say probably the thing that gives me the most traction has been Flames of War. When I started out, it was just kind of throw spaghetti at the wall and see what kind of stuck. And some of my first videos I did were X-Wing, FFG's X-Wing.
Okay.
And I think that was one of the first ones that hit big. And it was right around when The Force Awakens came out. So there was still a lot of goodwill about at that point.
Right.
And X-Wing had just come out with the Force Awakens themed starter set, and we did a battle report, and that one really took off.
Oh, sure.
And that gave a lot of traction at the beginning, but eventually we just kind of petered off with X-Wing. I got kind of disenchanted with it in version 2, but by then we were already covering other stuff. But you mentioned the YouTube algorithm, and that's very hard to, try to feed that algorithm what it wants to get views. And ultimately, Flames of War gets me the most views. One, because I think there's an empty space. And if your viewers don't know what Flames of War is, it's a 15 millimeter World War II game from Battlefront Miniatures. And basically, it's like the Warhammer 40K of the historical crowd.
Yeah, and actually, and real quick, I do want to jump in. I haven't covered Flames of War on the channel yet. It's one that I do want to cover. I do want to talk about like Team Yankee. I love the idea of like I know Team Yankee is technically historical because it's supposed to be like 1980s, but I still look at it as modern because it's all modern. It's all still stuff that we have today. But I mostly real quick, I wanted to interrupt for viewers of the channel who don't know me or don't know John. Flames of War is actually how I met John. So when John just said that he started with X-Wing, that was actually a bit of a surprise because I just assumed your channel had gotten its start with Flames of War because of how big, at least at the time when we met, that you were going in on that. So definitely going to cover Flames of War. I just haven't because I'm a disaster. But anyways, go ahead. Sorry for interrupting.
No. Flames of War is great, and Flames of War. It's funny with that algorithm. Like I have hundreds of videos I've released over this 7 years, and the video that gets likes is just this one random. I think it's a 3rd edition Flames of War battle report from like 5 years ago. And I think it has over like 100,000 views. And so many people get introduced to my channel through that video, even though when I look at that video now, it's like so old and its production values are terrible. And, it's just in my living room and, it's just kind of, this is what they're seeing. And I don't know why the algorithm points them to that particular video as opposed to the newer stuff or whatever, but there's something that it just grabbed onto that one video and did it. So, Flames of War is still, I love that game. That's probably my favorite game. And my son Jake plays and the guys play, but boy, there's so many other games out there that I'd love to play too. It's just crazy. Like I like the Warlord stuff. I play like 3 or 4 of those different games. We just started dipping our toe into bolt action, Black Seas with the sailing ship. With bolt action, yeah.
Yeah.
I picked up the Pacific starter set and really like that. We did like a introductory battle with that starter box.
We were in Utah over my birthday for my niece's wedding, and we went to this place called Gajo Games. Did I already tell you about Gajo Games?
You did. It sounds awesome.
Yes. So real quick for all of the viewers, Gajo Games is in Sandy, Utah. It's in this old brick building, and you walk in, and on the first floor is all retail, which is funny because it's literally a maze. There's no, easy lines and aisles and, easy ways to find everything. And it's just all kind of a mess, but it's all miniatures. Warlord, Games Workshop, everything. But if you look up, there's a giant hole in the ceiling, which then goes to the second floor. There's a couple of staircases to get up there, and there's 16 gaming tables around it. I only ever got to go shopping but I absolutely would love to go up and play just because of the environment. But while we were there, I got the Band of Brothers starter for Bolt Action. So I'm in the process of putting that together. So there, yeah, we were talking about BattleTech, but if you're just dipping your toe into Bolt Action, same. So we're gonna have to get together.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so far I like Bolt Action. It seems pretty fun. I stayed away from Bolt Action for a long time, and my excuse was I did not want to collect the same terrain in 2 different scales.
Right.
Like, I already have Normandy in 15 millimeter. Now I got to do it in 28 millimeter, and it's just like, oh my gosh. And it's like, a tree's a tree, a hedge is a hedge. It'll work. Swap out the buildings.
Right. You can have, and depending on the buildings, they can be repurposed a lot of times as well, especially if you want to get into other historical games. So, but the biggest problem is for we'll call it the home gamer, is just the terrain in general, because it's fun to have, but oh my gosh, does it just eat up so much room? And I'm already a hoarder as it is.
Yeah. Well, when I was younger, I was a lot more into scratch building terrain, but I just don't have time or the desire to do it now. So now I'm just buying the stuff usually when I can, and pre-painted better. Like what's that company? The one that Battlefront has, Gale Force 9. I love their terrain.
Yeah, their terrain's really solid. Sometimes it's like, okay, your hill is a little pricey for a hill, yeah. But especially like when you actually get into like model type stuff, really good, really well detailed. I can't even remember what the brand is called now. I should, but I don't. Anyways, it's from Gale Force 9. It's really good.
But that said, I still have some of your buildings that I use all the time in Flames of War. I love them.
I had forgotten about those. I wonder if I still have those files somewhere.
I don't know. Anyway. It was for a Shifting Sands. My wife painted like we had 15 of them, and I still use them to this day.
Oh, they were fun little kits. I think I might have to resurrect those. Anyways, anyway. Sorry, I keep interrupting.
I like it. But anyway, so Warlord Games 2, what are the other ones? Oh, there's the Epic American Civil War. I like that one. So there's a lot of Warlord Games stuff I like. But, their stuff's getting so pricey now, too. It's hitting Games Workshop territory.
Yeah, when the starter sets are actually really good. I mean, they're about 100 to 150, which for a miniatures game, not the greatest, but I kind of get it.
It's kind of what you expect, though, nowadays.
Yeah, but I mean, like $100, I think is fine for a miniature starter set. I think when I first got into 40K 3rd edition, it was like 75. My issue is, so like the Band of Brothers set was, I think it was like 130 retail. And then I was like, oh, maybe I'll get like some extra guys. Now you get 30 of them in a box, but it's still like another 60, 70 bucks, just to get that box. And then on top of that, I didn't know what I really needed to move into from the starter. So at that point, yeah, the price is just kind of like, I'm going to come back later. So
yeah. And I did some reviews for some like third-party things that would be appropriate for Bolt Action, like some, I forget the name of the company now, but they did tanks and stuff. I did a review of them. Some really good stuff that's not quite as expensive. But, either way, though, I like the Warlord game stuff. Now, who's making a good starter set, since you mentioned it, is Battlefront's been killing it with their starter sets. Their current starter sets are $65 US.
Really?
It has so many tanks in it. Yeah, they did like 2 starter sets for the Eastern Front release. Like one's all infantry and one's like all tanks, but it's like 20 tanks for 65. It's just amazing.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I like the starter sets. I've got so many games with starter sets. Like you play, what is it, Dystopian Wars?
Yes.
And
Well,
I got the
I
starter
have
set for
Dystopian Wars. I haven't played it. I have it.
I haven't played the new version. I love the old version, but then it died, and I sold off my whole collection. And then it came back, and I'm like, oh, darn.
Well, it's actually not a bad thing that you sold off your collection because most of the old ships don't apply anyways. Like they put in like some conversion rules. Like if you have this ship, then run it as this ship kind of a thing. But for the most part, they're even trying to get away from the old models and just go with the new stuff. But that's a business decision. So
I love that. I love that old range. Those models.
Yeah, no, they did really well. The old Spartan models. My only real issue was looking back now is the resins were good, but there were also a lot of flaws. And then I look at like a lot of resins that are coming out now, and I rarely see any flaws. Like they still had like where you would see like some of the mold seams in the models, whereas the stuff that I've seen from War Cradle, that stuff's almost flawless. Their resins, and then they've shifted most everything over to plastic anyways. So yeah, I'm not trying to knock Spartan, but it is one of those where they looked good, but there were still issues with the resin technology at the time. So, anyways, go on. Sorry.
No. So I'm trying to think. So yeah, so that's where we are kind of now. You know, during lockdown, we were at a point where it's like, all right, you know, are we going to do something with this channel during lockdown? And we decided to start, dip our toe into Patreon because we realized that for Flames of War anyway, the Flames of War stuff would, triple or quadruple anything else that we would put out. And I didn't want to, like I said before, just be one company, whether it's 40K or I don't want to be beholden to any one gaming system. But we realized that with the Patreon that there's this community that's not being served, and the Patreon would be a way to do that. And I still love playing Flames of War, so with the Patreon, the main draw is we do like a battle report a month for the patrons that only they get. And it's worked really well. We've had the Patreon over a year now, year and a half, and we're still going strong, and it helps buy models for the next release every time it comes out and all that. So we dipped our toe in Patreon. We spent some of that Patreon money to buy new cameras and lights and things like that, and that's really helped because YouTube monetization doesn't get you a ton of money, and you don't get into this business for the cash, right?
Well,
you do it for other narcissistic reasons, but
I'm kind of here for the cash. I'm not getting any, but I'm kind of here for it. But I also kind of just look at it like, for me, I want it to get to the point where the channel can just fund itself. Because like right now, if I buy something, I mean, it's coming out of the family budget. Or if if I want to do an upgrade to the camera or the layouts, or finally pay for like some graphic design. The logo for my channel was literally me and Carell drawn. Like, sure, this'll work. I am not an artist at all. But yeah, so that's interesting to hear that you say that the monetization isn't that great on the videos itself. But I mean, anyways, regardless, it's not zero, so that's something. So
yeah, I mean that's true, and we're at a point where I mean it's not like we're making money and I can quit my job or anything like that anytime soon. But
you're not buying a mansion in the middle of West Virginia or anything yet?
no, but you know it's enough to pretty much pay for what we need to get the channel right. You know the newer release and stuff like that, and when there's emergency too, like I think there was 1 month where it covered our food and groceries, so it was nice to be able to turn that hobby into something helpful. You know, it wouldn't be possible without the fans of the page, which have been really, really nice.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, yeah, because you just was it? How recently did you hit 10K on your channel?
I would say it's probably right around New Year's, maybe a little bit afterwards.
Okay. Yeah, I thought I remembered seeing you make a video about it, but I didn't remember how quickly it was. So what do you think has been the biggest driver to get people over to your channel?
Well, it's interesting because I look at the analytics and it seems to be the number of videos. Like before lockdown, when the channel was just kind of bubbling in the background, and I threw up something every once in a while. You know, maybe we would get 50 people a month or something like that. And then when we started to do it for real, you know, and invest more time in it, we would see numbers like 200 or 300 a month. And still, that's kind of slow growth for a YouTube channel, but it's growth, right?
Yeah.
So like we hit 10,000 at the beginning of the year, and I think we just passed 11 like a couple days ago. So you know it's a slow but steady thing. But I see that number fluctuate based on, you know, is it a month where I can get more than one battle report out, or if I post more than 3 times a week. You know, if I don't do those things, I see that number drop like in real time. It's like, oh yeah, and so that's always a good indicator. Like, and it's interesting too because that just means there's new fans out there that are constantly finding this stuff. So there's an audience that's not being served that I'm eventually finding, and I think you're finding the same thing too. Different ways you advertise your channel gets you, you know, additions, subscribers, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've really been pushing the shorts a lot lately, just because some of the people that I follow kept talking about shorts and they hated shorts and they didn't want to do shorts. For those of you in the chat, let us know. Do you see the shorts? Because I mean, I'll be honest, I've had some success with them. I actually looked. I've gotten about 120 subscribers in the last 2 months. You know, and most of them aren't off of shorts. But I'm also seeing the traffic for the videos just kind of spiral. So, all right. So Zazusa says that he sees the shorts. So Zazusa, question for you. Like, do you actually watch them? You know, do you watch it if you know that it's from a specific channel, or you know, or do you just see it, you know, flipping by? So let's see. Oh, there we go. Phone ping. So I have, cool. Yeah, I haven't seen that about shorts. I've seen it about like regular videos. Like I'll get notifications, but I haven't seen it on shorts. So that's actually kind of interesting.
I get notifications when you do shorts.
Oh, I'm very sorry, because then that means it's blowing you up like every day.
I like it. I'd turn it off if I didn't want it.
I appreciate that. So that's awesome. Okay, we've gotten a little bit into the weeds on YouTube, but let's backtrack a little bit. So you said that you've basically been a gamer most of your life. What's the first game that you remember playing?
I remember making up games, like with just figures, or even like the game of Go pieces, the little white and black stones. Those were stormtroopers and rebel troopers, and dice. But the first real like miniature game, oh, would have to be. Well, I played a lot of Avalon Hill when it came out in the 80s, like their classics, Gettysburg and Midway and all that stuff. But those really didn't have miniatures. I want to say the first ones were, oh, I know what it is. I even did a retro gaming video about it. 1977. So this might be even before your time. A movie came out. A movie came out called Midway, starring Charlton Heston. And there was a game from Milton Bradley called Carrier Strike. And it had little aircraft carrier miniatures with the deck that you could move off and go back in. But it was like a Milton Bradley board game, but it had these cool miniatures. And I was too young to play the game at that time, but I remembered that and I loved it, and I made up my own rules. But I did pick up a copy on eBay years ago to make my kids play it. And I think that was my first one, though. But yeah, Carrier Strike from Milton Bradley with an exclamation point.
Which here it is.
Yeah.
Let's see. We're gonna mute this real quick. So 1977. I don't think I've ever heard of this one.
Yeah. And they actually did a remake of this like in the mid 2000s. And I have that version too. But yeah.
Okay. Oh, so I saw that while I was flipping through.
Mm-hmm.
But so this kind of, I mean, obviously this is a little bit, smaller, more of an actual board game. Real quick, Is this your copy?
This is my copy that I'm holding. Yeah.
Okay, so this.
I mean, this is one I bought off eBay many years later.
That's what I meant. I figured it was yours. I just meant the one that you had as a child.
No, that one's long gone.
Yeah, I had one. I've looked it up. I don't remember what it's called, but I'm not gonna look it up right now. That was like you played it on the floor, and you had like each side had a battleship, and then like 3 little frigates or something, and they all had little tiny slots on the bottom of the ship, and then each side
you'd shoot marbles at them.
It wasn't marbles; it was these little flat discs.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because then you had these submarines that would shoot the discs, and then like if you got it into the slot, it would pop, the towers or the guns or whatever off of the ships, and then first person to lose all of their towers lost the game. So this is surprisingly good. Especially for
it's very clever mechanics. It's a silly board game, but it's got some really clever, mechanics to it, and it's a lot of fun.
So when you say like what kind of clever mechanics? I mean, obviously, I'm assuming from this that there's takeoff and landing. Yeah,
I mean, like how those planes kind of slot into the carrier, and you have to clear the back of the ship if you want things to land because there's planes there. And then those pilots have different skill ratings, so when they fight each other, there's better pilots and worse pilots. I think there's a lot of little nuances to it, but I mean, still, it's just a simple game, but it's pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah, I like doing that. I try to reserve Fridays on my channel for old stuff. And my general rule of thumb is 20 years or more. Uh, Sometimes a little less, usually more, but I try to keep it for that. And this just I really like those those carriers for some reason.
It's fun, yeah.
Okay.
And then, and then going from there, I think like the first miniatures I bought as a teenager would have to have been, I don't know if you've heard of Starfleet Battles from the old Task Force games, but it's basically Star Trek.
Oh, yeah.
Star Trek miniatures. But that game was super complicated. I played it for years and years, but it's like, almost like filling out your taxes to do a turn. Those 80 war games, but they had miniatures. I played Ogre from Steve Jackson. Those were some of the first miniatures I bought when they had those miniatures come out. So yeah. I mean that's kind of where I started. The first BattleTech I remember had like little plastic models. They were like the Japanese models. It was the first BattleTech wasn't even called BattleTech when I bought it. It was Battle Droid.
Wow. So you actually had battle droids.
I had battle droid, and it had Japanese animation mechs in it, like those kits. Like I remember that like it had screws in the model.
So do you know the story of that?
Oh yeah.
Okay, well
I've seen mechs and
no, not the unseen mechs. I'm talking about those actual kits. So I ended up just like deep diving and finding like all of just like these weird nuggets of information that are out there. And Jordan Weissman, the guy that founded FASA and created BattleTech, was at like some toy trade show or something. And because they'd done like a few things before they did BattleTech. And he was walking around the trade show and passed by this booth with these Japanese model kits that were on clearance. And he's like, oh, I think we can do something with it. And so bought all of them. They came up with battle droids, threw those in there, and released it. But the thing is, those model kits were all on clearance. They weren't getting any more. So it's like, I think that's when you saw the shift. Like they would do the metal miniatures or the little plastic or the little cardboard standees. But yeah, it's one of those just like weird artifacts. Like nowadays, the games are so highly produced, and we're going to get the 3D sculpts and mass produce everything, and it'll all be specific. But when was the last time you heard of somebody just like, oh yeah, I can totally do something with that, and I'll just pile that into my stuff.
That's a good one. I think one of those models stayed in like my son's toy box for 20 years. Just at the bottom of the toy box because it was so well made, and it never broke. It just little antennas maybe, but yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Okay.
I know we've talked about BattleTech, off the channel just at some point, and I will say that I like the new. I liked BattleTech when it came out, but I like the new Alpha Strike. I played a couple of games with that with some friends, and it's really enjoyable. I mean, it's like the 40K version of BattleTech. You can get a 2 or 3 hour game done with, a half dozen or so mechs on the table, which you couldn't do in the original game.
I love the granularity of BattleTech. I love it's the PPC shot. I get you in the head, and boom, your mech's out in one hit. Those are always great. But it is so non-conducive to actually running, like a company or a regiment size game. which I like the fact that they've got Alpha Strike, or even Battle Force doing that. So I know they've done different options over time. So okay, so you did early Avalon Hill, moved into BattleTech early on, clearly before I ever even knew it existed. And I feel like I've known it forever, but I didn't even find out until 1989. Yeah, I was in 8th grade, and I was the biggest fan of Robotech. Loved Robotech. Still do to this day. Find me, like, especially from the era, a better put together story. Even considering that they took 2 unrelated anime series and just spliced it all together and made this giant pile of nonsense.
Well, see, I'm going to have to disagree with you there. I'm going to have to give that to my personal favorite, which is Space Battleship Yamato.
That does not surprise me at all. I've heard of it. I've never actually watched it.
I love the show. I loved it as a kid, and I have the miniatures for the game that came out like in the 90s. And
I didn't even know there was a game.
Still build the models to this day.
Oh.
And they recently, like about 7 or 8 years ago, redid it, like to modern standards with modern animation, and the story. I don't know how they did story even better. I just love that. But I love BattleTech. See, so I was old enough. I was introduced to BattleTech first. Then when Robotech came out, I'm like, wait a second. I've seen these things before in BattleTech.
Right. Well, so that's the thing is Robotech came out in, I think, 84.
Yeah.
Well, no, 86. 86. It released in Japan in 84. And so then it was like 3 years later, like I'd had some of the Robotech role-playing game books. And I remember at school, this kid's like, oh, you like Robotech? You should check out BattleTech. I'm like, what is going on here? He's like, well, it's the same thing, same robots, but there's an actual game that you can play with it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. And that's where I got started with BattleTech. Was this kid in junior high telling me, hey, this thing exists, because I didn't know about the game stores. Like, there were like 4 of them in the Phoenix area at the time. And so, yeah, I definitely, you've definitely got me beat on some of that, but
well, here's a real runoff into the weeds for you. Okay. So my wife
hasn't done that yet.
My wife was talking to me, and she's like, there was a show I loved as a kid that had robots and mechs that the guys drove. And I was trying to figure out what she was talking about. Do you remember a cartoon called Exoforce?
Oh my gosh!
That had like the guy in the mech suit that my kids had the toys. I completely forgot about it in something. But then I remembered my kids had the toys when they were real young. And what an awesome...
I had the toys.
You had the toys. That could use a reboot.
Oh, actually,
miniatures game.
I don't think it necessarily needs. Well, okay, it could use a reboot. It could use it. Nowadays, I think it would gain a lot more traction than it did at the time. But overall, that was the story was really good. The animation was really good. I mean, it's not as good as we'd get like today, but for the times, it was fantastic. Have you heard of the channel Toy Galaxy?
Oh yeah. I think I've subscribed to them.
Okay, he did at least 1, maybe 2 videos about Exoforce. and just the history and where it came from, and like, you know, the fact that, you know, the topics that it covered, you know, I mean, they're aiming this at kids, but they're talking about, you know, they're talking about slavery, they're talking about, you know, like combat, people are dying, all this kind of stuff. And it's like when you look back on it, like as like, because I think it was like my junior or senior year in high school when it came out. I didn't pick up on all of that, you know, as I would as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that they were putting it in there, so even if they don't reboot it, just make it like so many of those old properties just aren't available.
Yeah.
You know, like Hasbro made a channel to just put GI Joe, like on YouTube, and it's like all on repeat. Now, I don't know what they're doing because they're all out of order, which, let me tell you, you're watching Arise Serpentor Arise episode 2, and then the next one is like the Viper, and you're like, what? I need part 3. What are you doing here? This doesn't make any sense. Anyways, I watch a lot of YouTube at night.
See, I told you that was a run into the weeds, but see, I'm glad you remember that. That show was pretty fun.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, and to segue that into the topic of miniatures, nowadays, I bet you could find somewhere someone has made a 3D model of those things, those mechs, and you could 3D print them and have your own game or use an existing game system to play with them, which is, I think, kind of cool.
Or maybe somebody would make up their own.
Yeah. Or I bet someone has.
Thingiverse does not have any Exoforce models, unfortunately. Yeah, so well, and actually kind of, you know, blending the two, I actually, like, when I kind of make that joke, but like I've kind of dropped hints on the channel a couple of times, but I actually am, you know, trying to put stuff together for a game that I've had an idea on, like I was like, it won't be easy to do, but I've had an idea for a game using action figures. So whether it's something like Exoforce or Masters of the Universe or you know, GI Joe, whatever, I think I've come up with a way, or with a rule set that would actually work, you know, regardless of the scale. Like, I mean, there's all sorts of like scale agnostic, you know, type systems,
Sure.
but I specifically want it to be for action figures. You know, there already are miniatures, but they're
Right.
painted and they have cool accessories. You know?
Yeah, that's good.
Why don't we have...
we like Godzilla in our family. Like, the whole family loves Godzilla, the Japanese movies.
Does not surprise me.
We have a very deep collection of like the 6-inch or 7-inch vinyl models. I don't have one handy of all those things, and they're like collectible toys I bought in the comic book shops and whatever. And then I found some PDF rules that were pretty decent to play with those toys on the tabletop. And you know, I think I had scouts come over once, because I was a scout leader for a while, to play that game with those, because it's real simple and it's toys, and you know, they can't damage them, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. But you know, it's entry level stuff like that gets people into this hobby long term. They're going to remember that kind of stuff, and you know, hopefully figure out, well, you know, it's not just video games. There's also other cool stuff. I play lots of video games too.
Yeah, no, and I'm not. I don't necessarily want to mentioning the video games, I don't necessarily want to cast aspersions and say, oh, well, no, video games are bad, because I play plenty of them as well. It is just different styles of play. As a dad, that's been one of those things where, having to, like our parents are like, why are you letting those kids play the video games all the time? And it's just like, okay, I get it, but it is the 21st century. There are going to be different methods of play. But yeah, like you were saying, as far as like the entry point, one reason I've kind of thought about doing that game is, miniatures are great. Don't get me wrong. But like for me, with the ADHD, sometimes it's like, okay, I need to paint this model or this regiment or whatever. I have so many BattleTech figures for a friend of mine that, like, I just have to get it done. Like, he's asked me to paint them. They're like 75% of the way there. I've actually already given him like 30, and they're done, finished. But it's these last few that I just like getting me to kick in and actually do the painting. And so sometimes it's like, oh, I want to play the game, but I don't necessarily want to do the painting. And so there is that kind of struggle. How do you get people that might like the game, but don't want to do the modeling, don't want to do the painting into the game or into the hobby, because you've got that barrier, like you can always play with unpainted models. I have no fault against anyone who does that. But it's, even now, you still have that barrier of, you at least have to put your stuff together, because otherwise.
Well, that makes me remember. There's this game I love, and I can't remember the name now, but it's Cars. It's like Mad Max, and you play it with Hot Wheel cars. Gaslands. Oh, love that game. Fantastic game. And there you go. And you can play that game. You could just go buy Hot Wheels, the game with Hot Wheels, and not do any modifications at all. My kids, there was like a 6-month period where we bought hundreds of cars. We just went to Goodwill and get a bag of Hot Wheels for $3 or whatever, And
even then, you're in the grocery store. Oh darn, it's $1.
Yeah, exactly. And they're painted, and it's all my kids played that game when it came out. And I think I have a battle report with one of my daughters in it, and Jake, my son, playing Gaslands, because it was so it's kind of like X-Wing and the templates and how it works, but such a clever game and such a great way to introduce them. And then for me, because I'm a nut, I would buy them, and I had to order specialty ones so I could build all the police cars from the first Mad Max movie and flip them and paint them and all that. But you could, we had the Batmobile, and all of those things were just playing Gasland. Such a fun game.
Yeah, so speaking of my trip to Utah when I got Bolt Action, that was actually, so we went to Utah twice in 2 months. Because one niece got married, and then a couple months later, another niece got married. So the first time is when I found the shop, or found Gajo Games the first time, and I got Gaslands and North Star Figures actually put out they've got 2 sets of sprues that are just all sorts of bits. So go buy your Hot Wheels, and then you don't have to raid your bits box, or maybe you don't have a bits box, but here's some machine guns or cow catchers or armor plates, whatever. And so I've used those. So I've got like a half dozen cars or so right now. I just need to get those painted. It's Gasland.
I had a somewhat popular video with how to do the car thing. Like, I modified a car and talked about some of the cars. But yeah, that's a fun game. If you guys haven't checked it out, I don't get commission on these recommendations, but it's a fun game.
Yeah, and So I haven't heard of Carmageddon or Crossout. Mad Max, I only know of the movie, not the.
GW had a car game, Dark Future or something like that, that had cars like way back, like around Space Marine and the Adeptus Titanicus time in the 90s, I guess.
I remember seeing the box. I've never actually seen the game. There's also, there's obviously Steve Jackson's Car Wars.
Love that game too. Those were some of the first miniatures I had because they were tiny little lead cars they had in that range. That one suffered kind of from BattleTech syndrome in that it could get complicated really quickly if you had like more than one or two cars at a time. But I love the universe of Car Wars, like Auto Duel Quarterly, their magazine book with the just love that game. That's some good memories.
Let's see. Have either of us ever done full dioramas for a tabletop scenario? Actually, why don't you talk about that? So you mentioned Shifting Sands a little while ago. And for those of you who don't know, the local Arizona Flames of War players usually get together once a year. Was there Sands this year? I think you skipped the last couple of years.
There's some weirdness with how Flames of War, the 4th edition, came out, and a lot of the old left, and it really killed our numbers for Shifting Sands. And with it coming out, like Shifting Sands that I participated, I didn't run it, but I participated in. I think we had like 8 people show up, a really sad number.
Oh wow!
I'd love to see it again, and I think that group is working on it. But anyway, as far as tabletops go, I have created them, but like I talked about earlier, it's just so much work. Like I created a Normandy table, and I poured resin and made the beach, clear water resin, and tried to do a really nice job for the water for a Normandy landing table that we only ever use for Normandy beach landings, which has a scenario is kind of boring, but it's cool. But I got this giant thing in my garage. I did have.
It's great once a year.
It's great. Well, yeah, even if not that much, and I had boxes of GeoHex. Do you remember GeoHex?
I do.
Terrain system. It was where you couldn't sculpt, rolling hills and stuff like that. It all had to be in 60-degree angles. But at some point, it's just not worth it. Although we did a Shifting Sands for Market Garden, and Jake did end up building like a 4-foot-long bridge for Market Garden for the British and Germans to fight over. That was a lot of fun. But lately, it's just a lot of work to sculpt and build, in my opinion. And I wish I had time, but I only have a finite amount of time, and it's either paint the models or a terrain project.
Yeah, and I think...
And I'm more and more on paint the models time.
Yeah, and I think the full sculpting, like you would... I'm going to call it this. I'm going to call it museum style. Because in a museum you'd want, yeah, exactly. So museum style, I think, sounds fun, but I think it then just kind of degrades when you want to actually get into gameplay, because number one, everything's permanent, so you can't change. If I want the river going this to the left, well, then the next game I can't make it go to the right. It's always going to go to the left. So then you run into the problem of, well, if I learn the table, I can win every time because I know how to take advantage of it. But then also just sometimes it's not as useful to balance your Sherman, on this rocky outcropped because you've sculpted it, as opposed to like using a piece of felt to represent rocky terrain or something like that. So
Yeah, it's always in the community. It's always an argument between that playability versus how it looks. And I've seen those beautifully sculpted mountains with trees, but you can't put your thing on it, or it'll slide down, or but people hate the wedding cake tiers. Very playable to put your models on those tiers and really easy to do, but it doesn't look anywhere near as nice. So that's
right.
It's a tough call.
Yeah, well, but like the reason I wanted to bring up Shifting Sands is because I think I think that, like, I don't think I ever actually played in one. I think I just watched. That was my fault. But I think one of the things that I always liked about Shifting Sands because there was always a theme to it. It wasn't just, hey, we're gonna run a tournament. I mean, I think like every 2 or 3 years, it was just like, okay, we're just gonna do a straight up, bring whatever you want, and we're gonna do a tournament. But it was always red versus blue. You had, okay, we have to get this many German players or German allied players, and this many, U.S., American, British, allied players. If the U.S. side is full, well, you better have a German army or be able to convince somebody to switch sides and play for the Germans. And I think one of the coolest parts about that, it was the tables, because they were like the community really came together. And so, yes, they were gaming style. It was, just like, it wasn't museum style, but would still put really, really good looking tables together that all fit that theme. And I think that was, that was really cool. Cause like, I think one year was Bulge. And so like all the tables were snow themed.
So I ran the Bulge one. So that was my baby. And I loved it. So Shifting Sands, I hate calling it a tournament because it was more, it's exactly like you said. It's more like almost like a campaign, because we didn't just have people playing Planes of War games. We had a Firestorm board, like an overall commander's table off to the side.
Oh yeah, I forgot that.
Both sides had leaders, and you would place attack arrows, and you were trying to move across. So it was really neat because our friend Mike Hott, I think he might have won as far as the total score. I think he was the highest placing player. He came and played in that one. But it was really neat because the campaign hinged on the last day. The last battle hadn't finished, and it was like 2 of the lowest placing people on the American and German side. Everything was hinged on the outcome of this one battle between these 2 guys. And in a normal tournament, those poor guys at the bottom table, because I've been there a lot, those guys at the bottom table, who cares? Nobody's watching. But everyone was gathered around, just hanging on the outcome of this battle. And it was such a great experience for it. And so we always tried to do something like that, at least when I ran it, and the guys subsequent, to have something. So it's not just a tournament. And I think that could be used for any game. That was Flames of War, but we did Team Yankee one year. But it could be anything. But I really like that. I don't like blue on blue historical. Mm-hmm. Why are the Americans fighting the British now? I want to see historical matchups, and that's what we did with Shifting Sands.
Yeah, and I mean, there's especially with historicals. I mean, there's definitely there's definitely reasons to do both. I mean, sometimes it's nice to just, okay, let's go in to a tournament and just see who's the best. Doesn't matter. Bring what you're going to bring. Let's see who's the best. There's absolutely an argument for that style of play. But especially with historicals, being able to, I mean, let's be honest, the whole point to historicals originally was, okay, what if I was Napoleon? Could I win at Waterloo? And so being able to take those campaigns, recreate them in a way, for the players, to make it fun, make it interesting, I think is really important. And I think Shifting Sands, and what you guys did, was a fantastic blend of the two. That you, honestly, I like, because I've been around. I've done Games Workshop. I've helped out at their grand tournaments, at Games Day, all that kind of stuff, and never really saw anything that I would compare to that. It was, to me, it was one of the better run events, and then also just passing on that knowledge over the time as well. Where it's like, okay, so who's, well, I want to run it next year. Okay, that's fine. But then everybody's still there. Okay, so how do we do this? How do we do that? How can we, come in and help design, what's going to be like the center scenario or things like that. So, I think that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you might run it. I ran it, but I couldn't have done it without like all the support. Because we had like, I don't know, it was like 12 or 16 snow themed tables, which aren't common,
Right.
Especially when we did it. Neoprene mats weren't a thing yet.
I know, right? I think
so. But everyone did it, and people had brought 2 or 3 boards of winter terrain, and they painted their armies in winter, and that's a very specific thing, but they did it because of that excitement to refight that battle and see what happens.
Yeah, and they were great events. They would get 30-40 people in Arizona, which I'll be honest, Arizona just confuses me as far as gaming goes. Like, especially, it's Arizona. How is there not like a January or February gaming convention in Arizona? Come play whatever and don't freeze. Because we don't get snow.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Anyways, so all right. Well, trying to think of what else I should ask you. This has been an absolute treat having you on.
Thanks. Well, Brian, I'm going to say I've got to go here in just a minute. I've got parent duties to take care of tonight.
Hey, that's totally fine. Anything? Okay, so real quick, everybody. John's channel is linked down below. Please do go give him a subscription. I know he's way bigger than I am, but if you're here, go check out his stuff. He does really, really good content, and he's just a good guy anyways. So, help bump his numbers up a little bit.
And hopefully, Brian, so we can collaborate. We'll talk off stream, but for your fans, let's do a battle report or something. Let's get together and throw some dice.
Make me actually play some of these games that I've been buying.
Well, and I think we have enough commonality in games we can find something.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I absolutely I'm looking forward to it. I think we can have a lot of fun. We've probably been delaying this way too long. But yeah, so any last things you want to shout out before you go?
No, I just want to say thanks to you for inviting me on. I always like talking, so it's good, and I love getting to chit chat with you on stream and before, just getting caught up, and I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. So definitely. All right, let's do this. I'll end the stream here in just a second. We'll say our proper goodbyes. But real quick for everyone else in the channel, do make sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Likes do help push out to the algorithm so that more people find out about the channel for both me and John. But absolutely do look for some collaborations between John and I coming in the future, and we will go for there. So thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.
Have a good one, guys.